Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset upon all sides of the iniquities and tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I shall strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. For you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the 6th episode of Emilio Is Dead. As you have likely put together from the thumbnail and my co-host Rothschild's eloquent intro, this episode we're going to be taking a look at the films of one Quentin Tarantula, in particular the early films of Quentin Tarantula, because, I mean, by and large, you might like one or two here and there, but the second half of the career, it doesn't hold a fucking candle to the first half of the career.
I think it's a fair thing to say. Nobody tuning in here is interested to hear us talk about Death Proof.
Yeah, correct. Also, we're going to be taking a look at the writing credits as well as the directorial credits, because if we only stuck to the early directorial credits, it would be three and a quarter movies, and that's not much of an episode. So we're going to be throwing in his script work as well, because let's be honest, I mean, a Tarantino script is a Tarantino script. The man is known for his writing. So
he is no slouch as a director. I almost feel his writing is so strong that I think people sometimes overlook how good of a director he is.
it's possible. I feel that he's almost become a parody of himself.
Yeah.
Like he almost has to go through the motions that
But
are
you know what?
expected.
I agree, but you know what, man? To get to that level, you had to have done something right to become a self-parody. You know what I mean?
Right.
To where people would even stick with you that long to see it devolve into that. I mean, I disagree. I thought what he came out with this year is arguably one of his best efforts, but like I said, we're not going to get into all that. We're going to jump off with his debut film he wrote and directed. It was a smash hit, apparently. Reservoir
And
Dogs.
he starred in it as well. Never forget Mr. Brown.
Jesus, we all try to forget his starring roles. We will not be discussing Destiny Turns Off the Radio either, much to nobody's disappointment.
So, what are your thoughts on Dogs? I've done a review of it on my channel, so if anyone's curious to hear my in-depth thoughts, you can go. All I'll say briefly is I am a fan, but not his best work, but pretty damn good for a debut.
Yeah, I'm in a similar position. It's it's not the one out of his like first three films that I find myself revisiting as I get older as much. That being said, when I was around 12 years old and saw it for the first time, I must have watched this movie on VHS. I mean, at least 20 sometimes. I mean, it was entertaining. It is also, I mean, the plot of it is based around a reveal, which I think any film that deals with that, the rewatchability factor isn't going to be as strong, which doesn't matter. If you make a great film, who gives a fuck if you need to rewatch it, or it could be a great film. I am with you though, not his strongest, but damn, it was a strong debut. Thinking about it, as far as his approach, I mean, come on, we can't talk about Reservoir Dogs without talking about the cop torturing ear slicing scene.
I think you can't talk about Reservoir Dogs, especially in a Tarantula retrospective, without pointing out one of his strongest, and some would also argue his weakest elements, his casting. He always
Oh,
just he loads his films with with character actors,
yeah.
and some would say it's overdone, but I would say definitely in Dogs he pulled it off well.
Oh, yeah. I I'm not. I don't subscribe to that argument. I think even in his lesser movies, casting, and again, I'm sure this will be a recurring motif of the episode. Of course, he fell off. I don't want to keep acknowledging that, but I mean, especially coming out the gate, I mean, I think his casting was fucking solid. Um, and it never felt like stunt casting. I know you misspoke there, but it never felt like even Travolta in Pulp Fiction. It never felt like, hey, this is my. It just felt like he genuinely admired John Travolta, and like, fuck it, I'm gonna use you. I feel like you don't get the shine you deserve. Uh, I don't know. It's just obviously Pam Grier and Jackie Brown, which it's funny in Reservoir Dogs, the characters in a fictional world have a discussion about
About
Pam
Pam
Grier.
Grier, yeah.
you know,
Don't they
um,
also to bring up the shitty movie? Don't they also bring her up in that Death Proof movie?
uh, come on, dude. Like I've watched Death Proof more than once.
I'm pretty sure the chicks bring her up
I'll
briefly.
say,
I
I'll
think
say
they
the
can. I
sound.
think they compare the Jungle Julia to her or something. They're like, "You're Pam Grierish," or so. I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm just mixing the two movies up because it's a bunch of people in a fucking car. That's highly possible. I could just be mixing Tim Roth
Yeah,
up with
both
Jordan Ladd.
conversations. Yeah, both conversations occurred in a car. Probably. Well, the one in Reservoir Dogs did.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, of course, the one in Death Proof did. The whole movie's people driving around in cars.
Jesus.
Anyway, who cares? Fuck Death Proof. Reservoir Dogs, solid film, solid
Oh,
debut,
you know what
solid
I am gonna
cast.
say? Totally agree. Totally agree. One thing I'm gonna throw out there that I don't see mentioned that I would like to say about Reservoir Dogs is the weakest soundtrack of any of his movies. And I can't blame him on that. I'm sure that was budgetary and not being able to get the rights to certain songs and whatnot. And obviously, the ones he got, I mean, Stuck in the Middle with You, I would say is synonymous with this film to anyone in my generation.
See,
Um,
I've never been a huge fan of any of his soundtracks, but I would have to disagree with you on this because the more familiar tracks, say in Pulp Fiction or something, they're more familiar. Whereas, like you said, this one,
oh,
the songs
it's
are
funny.
more synonymous with the film.
It's funny. They are now, but I mean, I remember when Pulp Fiction hit, like you didn't hear Jungle Boogie a lot. You know what I mean? Like you didn't hear even Let's Stay Together. You didn't hear that all the fucking time. Like it's kind of a staple now, but or Miserlou. You know what I mean? Uh, they kind of became staples, but they really weren't when his movies hit. Um, but again, that's subjective. You either like the music or you don't. I would just argue that the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack isn't as versatile. It doesn't have as it's got like maybe three, four standout songs where I'd say a majority of his fans would speak to his soundtracks being a strength. Whereas in Reservoir Dogs, I don't think it was quite there. But again, I have to forgive it as it's a debut, and I'm sure the budget wasn't there. I could who knows what they even spent just to get stuck in the middle with you. I'm sure that probably took a huge chunk out of the soundtrack budget.
Right.
But
Well,
enough me fascinating our audience with the Reservoir Dogs soundtrack. Let's move on to Pulp Fiction.
actually, chronologically, next it should be
Oh,
True
yeah,
Romance.
correct. See, even I'm like, no, he's just a director. Let's do that. You're right. True Romance.
What
Thoughts?
what are your thoughts? My thoughts? I would have to say True Romance is probably my third favorite Tarantino project overall, like that he's been involved with. Uh,
It's top five for me, I think.
you say top five?
Yeah, I think it would make my top five. I'd have to think about. I'd have to kind of look at the filmography, like place it in front of me. But I can safely say I think it would make my top five.
I will also say I feel that with the exception of Slater, that Tony Scott almost out Tarantino with his cast. Like his
Mm.
cast was, pretty top tier in my opinion. There's not many weak links in that. Even Michael Rappaport, who, let's be honest, he's not an actor. He's just Michael Rappaport in
And
everything.
that character is perfect for Michael Rappaport.
Precisely, that's what I'm saying. Like everyone is pretty much on fire in that. Like I said, Slater, yeah, he's a watered down lesser Nicholson, but
I have a soft spot for Slater, regardless. I see what you're saying, though. He's not the person who sells this movie. He doesn't ruin it. He doesn't do it a disservice, but he doesn't really, in my opinion, kind of add anything. But like his presence
other than
doesn't.
other than his knockoff Nicholson eyebrows.
Yeah, yeah, of course. um, Oh yeah, I cannot argue with the cast of True Romance. I mean, that is a fucking cast. And any
Gandolfini.
yeah, a lot of people forget that. A lot of people forget Samuel L. Jackson had that small role in it.
I don't
You
eat the
know,
pussy, I eat the ass. Or you know, I
yeah,
eat the butt. That's what he says.
eat every motherfucking thing. Um, yeah, beyond that, hey, come on. Any film that's gonna have Hopper and Walken sit down, I don't even care. Let alone that scene is brilliantly written, but they could have just been sitting there like reading a children's book to one another, and I would have been fucking fascinated. So
The way that movie, that scene in particular is lit. Tarantino on the commentary track for that, he's even expressed himself that no one other than Tony Scott could have made that, like with the
oh,
thick ambient lighting and the smoke and all that. Like,
dude, the love scene in the beginning of it, that is like so Tony Scott. That blue. It looks I mean it almost looks identical to Top Gun, which if you haven't seen Top Gun, do yourself a favor, run out tomorrow and do anything but watch Top Gun.
I can oblige you there, I believe.
But yeah, it's
One
strong.
last
Strong.
point on the cast of True Romance. Without a doubt, hands down, my favorite Brad Pitt performance ever.
And you know what's funny? I would argue maybe my favorite performance in the film, and I would argue I would not I would not have said that years ago when I first got into this film. Uh, around that same age, 12 years old. Um, but it's grown on me. It's funnier. It ages well. I don't know what it is. Maybe Brad Pitt as an actor has just grown on me over the years or something. But there's something when I see True Romance now, the Floyd stuff stands out so much more than it did to me when I, initially had fallen in love with this film. Um, yeah, I'd agree. But going back real quick also to it's a strong cast. I don't think anybody would deny it. I mean, even if you don't like the movie, you can't say it's a weak cast. The out Tarantinoing Tarantino aspect of it, I kind of disagree with because I feel like everyone in that movie was either a star of their time or still relevant in some way. I mean, there's no one in there. There's no Robert Forster. There's no
Yeah,
Pam.
there was no resuscitation, but to be
No,
fair, Tarantino hadn't started that trend either. So even though he probably wasn't doing what Tarantino did in Reservoir Dogs and just having a super stacked cast, I feel he
yeah,
kind of outdid him there.
there
With
is
his
nobody. I mean, like, what do you like Lawrence Tierney or something? But I mean, you're resuscitated. I mean, he needed to be literally resuscitated. Didn't he die like right after that movie or something?
probably. But also, to be fair, like you pointed out, this movie had considerably more money to work with, so
Yeah, yeah.
that certainly didn't hurt the casting efforts
I
at all.
believe, I believe it was the sale of this script that no, never mind. I was going to say it led to Reservoir Dogs, but no, I don't think that's true. I think it was Lawrence Bender who, his producer, longtime producer, uh, talked him into like, hey, give me a month because I think this Reservoir Dogs script has potential. And he's the one who got like Keitel interested, and that's what got it made. I forget there is some significance to him selling that True Romance. Maybe it's just because it was his first script,
Probably.
and I'm elevating it in my mind to something
Didn't
else.
I thought he sold the Natural Born Killer script first, or I
He
might be
may.
wrong there.
It was around the same time. He may have. Who cares? He sold two scripts before he made Reservoir Dogs. Congratulations.
Right. Well, speaking of Natural Born Killers, I believe chronologically that comes next. That was 93, correct?
No, it was '94, same as Pulp, but I'm not sure which came out. I know I saw Natural Born Killers in the theater in August of '94, and I didn't catch Pulp Fiction in theaters, so I don't have a personal reference
Well, we'll
point.
just go ahead and go with Natural Born Killers next, because who the hell's gonna tell us we're wrong here? Some asshole in the comments, Mark Turner.
uh, so thoughts on Natural Born Killers, but let's hone in. Not Oliver Stone. Let's hone in on the Tarantino Natural Born Killers. You know what I mean? Like what elements do you feel constitute that as a Tarantino film? Because honestly, I don't even feel comfortable discussing it as part of like the Tarantino filmography. What's your take on that with Natural Born Killers?
Natural Born Killers has just always felt like the more nihilistic version of True Romance. It felt like he wrote two versions of the same script, and then he gave one like a happy Hollywood ending, even though I know in his original one Clarence dies or whatever, and then
Which made no sense. The way Tony Scott made True Romance, that if he killed Clarence at the end with that tone that True Romance has, it would have been dumb. It would have made no sense to me.
but yeah, to me it just kind of felt like the exact same script, but just made dirty and gritty,
It
and
did,
with
I
the
know
unhappy ending,
well,
the
I
non Hollywood ending, I should say.
I read that script in the '90s, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember much about it. I mean, I've heard the stories over the years. I know he himself is not a fan. He, I believe, was quoted as saying, if Oliver Stone was just going to buy my script to remake it, he would rather him just ripped it off and not bought it at all. I obviously the whole media fixation on violence and the celebrity of killers or immoral people, that had to have, I can't imagine Tarantino doing that in his script, because basically, as you said, it's True Romance and Natural Born Killers kind of follow, well, not kind of, they follow the same fucking narrative. They're just different. It's like Tarantino sat down one day, watched Bonnie and Clyde and Badlands, and was like, here, let me knock these scripts out tonight. um, yeah, and Stone did bring, he made it his own, and I'd argue it's for the better. I think if Tarantino would have made that movie, it would have been, it just would have been standard. I think Tarantino would have been doing his best Badlands homage or some other like Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry. Like he would just be doing some genre thing with it that I think Oliver Stone took it in a direction that was
He
a
made it
very
an art film.
yeah. Honestly, it is. I mean, it's a violent art film, but it is. And I would argue his point in that movie and like the kind of message of that movie actually resonates more today than it did even in 1994. I mean, I don't. But again, I'm breaking my own rule now. I'm just going into listen to an Oliver Stone podcast. Yeah, I dig the movie, man. I'm a huge fan of it. But as far as the Tarantino contribution, the only thing outside of that opening diner scene that feels Tarantino-ish to me, but even the way Stone did it, it kind of cancels out the Tarantino-isms of the script for me. But yeah, it's a fun. I'd argue. I've always said I think it's one of the most '90s movies ever made. I think that's a very. If I had to make a top 5 movies that encapsulate the '90s, I think I'd put Natural Born Killers on that list. But Tarantino, it's hard for me to, uh, kind of make that connection.
Well, I mean, if nothing else, it like you said, the selling of the script helped him fund other productions. So you got to
Yeah.
acknowledge it in that regard, at least.
Hell, he didn't even acknowledge it in that way. But yes, I acknowledge it in that way, and I'm a fan of the film. So, but I
As am
love. I
I.
mean, he threw a fit. I mean, even on the film, he doesn't have a writing credit. He has a story credit. He demanded his name being taken off of the script. But yeah, I don't know. I will easily say Natural Born Killers is better than almost everything he's done this century. So whatever. Pulp Fiction. Have you ever
Uh,
seen it?
Pulp Fiction. It was actually, I want to say, it was the second movie of his I'd seen after. Well, not of his that he'd actually directed. It was the first, but of his like in the films that we are encapsulating in this podcast, it was the second.
And
I.e., shit he wrote.
for anyone listening, I'd like to point out Gath and I'm sorry, Roth, I'm Roth, Reed and I, we do have a little bit of an age disparity. I'm much younger. Um, and I saw the, no, Gath, you are a little bit younger than I, so I actually saw his films kind of chronologically as they came out, with the exception of Reservoir Dogs and True Romance. From Pulp Fiction on, it was chronological for me. So Pulp was my introduction to Quentin Tarantino.
Interesting side story about this. When I first saw it, it was on a rental DVD, and the
Uh,
DVD was scratched as hell, and it actually froze on the stabbing Uma Thurman in the heart with a needle scene. So for about 4 years, I never knew what the rest of the movie was. It just ended there for me.
wow. What were your thoughts for those 4 years on Pulp Fiction?
Well, to be
So,
honest, I wasn't a fan. I definitely wasn't going to spend money to see what the rest of the movie was. I was just like that. It wasn't enough, and I mean it was a cliffhanger, man. But I mean, now obviously that's not the film's fault. That's the
what was,
faulty DVD's fault.
of course, what was the first then? What was your introduction to Tarantino?
From Dusk Till Dawn.
Ah, so you saw that. Wow. Yeah, going from that to Pulp Fiction. Uh,
Yeah.
that's a shift. Not complete shift, but I mean it's definitely a shift. Um, right. So when you finally got around to seeing Pulp Fiction, what changed your mind? You said you were left on a cliffhanger. You obviously couldn't have been too intrigued if it took you 4 years to return. What made you return, and what were your thoughts when you did?
Finding the DVD cheap. That was why I returned. And I honestly I don't remember my initial thoughts. I never thought that it was as super awesome as everyone made it out to be. Like I never
Mhm.
hated it, but I never got like all the I've never really gotten the super hype on any film though. Like I look at them all just like they're moving pictures. You know what I mean? Like it's nothing too fancy here. No one's curing cancer. You know what I mean? People are up there
Right.
playing pretend in front of a camera, and that's about the end of it. But
Exactly, and that's why we do this podcast. We're big fans of bullshit. I mean, we
but
don't really like these.
I don't even remember where I was going with that. But oh
Uh,
yeah, right. Mainly, my biggest problem with it, outside of just Travolta in general, is the fucking dance scene. Like you were talking about, it felt like he just liked Travolta, and it felt like he liked him a little too much, especially in
I
that scene.
Well, you know what's funny? I did for years. I was one of those people who thought, man, you threw that in there just because of Saturday Night Fever, and you got Travolta in there. But apparently, that was in the script. Like that role was initially, if I recall, written for Michael Madsen, and it was like I got that feeling too when I first saw it. Like, oh, you threw this in here because you got Travolta, you know what I mean, back in a well, I mean, he nobody could have predicted that it would, rejuvenate his career the way it did. But it was still a respectable. I mean, Reservoir Dogs. I don't know if this was on our attempted podcast that failed. We pointed out how he wanted an Independent Spirit Award, and he had clout. As we pointed out, he was selling scripts. He was an it boy. You know what I mean. It was a good thing for Travolta to be attached to this project, regardless, even if it didn't become the cultural phenomenon that it became.
But
It
did you think
still,
the dancing itself was actually good? Either participant,
I don't,
Uma or Travolta.
I don't think that was really the point. Was to be like, is this good dancing? Like, I didn't look at it like. I mean, she's coked up in that part, I guess.
Why do we want to watch like 2.5 minutes of bad dancing though?
Well, it's setting up.
Advancing the
I
plot
would
anyway?
argue, I would actually argue this, and this is the thing with Tarantino. I will say, even with plots in his films, they tend to always be just hangout movies in my mind, which I am a big fan of. But I would argue that scene, it's the whole setup. It's the back and forth of him being attracted to his boss's wife. You know, the dancing with her. It's creating that tension of like he doesn't know exactly how to approach her, but he's kind of attracted to her. They're kind of flirting, and then again, it all goes to hell when she ODs. But I'd argue that builds that relationship and what unfolds after it. Uh, Him even going inside and he would still to take his jacket off and then go and talk to the mirror. Nah, you're just gonna go home and jerk off and that's it. You know what I mean? Like it's setting it up for her to discover the heroin and accidentally,
I would
I don't
argue that that dance
I don't
scene
I
is
never
why fast forward buttons were invented.
uh Okay.
Another
So,
thing that always bugged me, why was he always so proud of the horrible the rotoscope or whatever the hell it's called, the car footage when Bruce Willis is driving away from the fight? You remember it's like old black and white grainy footage.
yeah,
It
yeah.
looks completely horrible, and I don't remember. It's not a commentary. It's some random documentary or interview I saw with him where he was just going on about how great it looked and how proud he was of that horrible looking effect.
Well,
I don't know.
it's for me on that subject. I grew up watching this on VHS on a tube television that was like 20 inches. So like that, honestly, I like that's the most I've seen it on Blu-ray. I've seen it in a movie theater since. Um, but do you ever have that where if you grew up with something, even if I've seen better quality versions of it in terms of like Blu-ray or HD, restorations and whatnot. Um, I still in my mind, I like when I think about Pulp Fiction, I see it on that TV that I had as a kid. You know what I mean?
You
And
see, I've always seen it on DVD or better, so no, I cannot relate in this case at all.
yeah, for me, it's one of those. As far as everyone, sucking this film's dick when it came out, that was definitely real. This movie was a big it was a moment, and I was never mad at that, you know. Again, I one thing I'll say about Tarantino, even the films, even his lesser films, I always get the impression that this dude is doing what he wants to do. I never get the impression. You could say it's egotistical, you can say it's you don't like it, whatever, but I think that's important. I think he's probably the last mainstream Hollywood director who has the clout to do whatever he wants and actually does whatever he wants. You know,
It's just a
um,
shame that generally what he wants to do now is tired cowboy
look,
movies in the snow and
I,
shit.
hey, I'm not saying the man. No one's going to accuse Tarantino of not being self-indulgent. Like, but again, I like that. I prefer that. I'd rather watch a film from somebody who is fucking full of it and in love with it and putting everything into it that filmmaker feels
All right,
is
on that note, and referencing back to his acting abilities in Reservoir Dogs, what do you think of Tarantino's acting in Pulp Fiction? Do you think he's improved at all? Do you think he's, like you said, just being overindulgent and dicking off? What are
I
your
don't think
thoughts
he's
on it?
I don't think he's capable of acting or improving on acting or get that man behind the fucking camera. Get him in front of I know he doesn't type or use a computer. Give him a notepad, put him behind the camera, get him as far away as possible from in front of it. I mean, it's in Reservoir Dogs and even in Pulp Fiction. And it's funny. I just realized we're probably going to go into From Dusk Till Dawn after I'm saying this, but in small roles like director cameos, I'm typically forgiving of that. Um, it's I would never ever want to see a film where he is cast as the main. Thank God he's never done that. Thank God his inflated ego has at least checked him on like, hey, dude, no, you're not Mr. Blonde. You know what I mean? Like that could have been fucking terrible. Thankfully, he took a character in Reservoir Dogs that was lesser. You know what I mean? Pulp Fiction, again, it's a lesser character. Not enough to derail it. And because he is the brainchild behind it all, I look past it. But no, he's not a good actor. I mean,
If you would take him out of the equation, who would you say the weak link is in the cast of Pulp Fiction? If you had to pick somebody, is there a weak
out,
link?
out of like the heavy hitters, you mean?
Out of anyone, you can pick background
I
people.
mean, I would say the chick. I don't even remember her name. Bruce Willis's girl with the blueberry pancakes,
The
whatever.
the French girl.
Yeah, whatever the fuck her name. I forget her name in real life. I would say she is, but again, I would also argue that could just be the character.
Yeah,
Maybe
being
she's meant to be.
obnoxious.
Yeah, I mean, she's very clingy and all that, so I can't even really fault her acting wise. It could just be the character, but I would say that's the one performance, whether it was written or how she portrayed it, that I don't feel is on par. Or actually, if you want to go with the heavy hitters, Bruce Willis,
You didn't like Bruce Willis in it?
easy. No, I like him. He doesn't ruin it. Again, like I'm sorry, I give Pulp a 10 out of 10, and I'm not one of those people who look. I got older. I moved on. That doesn't mean that the film is lesser. And I think a lot of people, that film, especially for people in my generation, I feel was a jumping off point or a starting point for a lot of people. It was kind of like what Nirvana was for, I guess, like punk rock or something. It was a gateway film. And like I said, yes, I've moved on. I have seen these films that he's referencing and homaging since. But that doesn't change the fact that, dude, he made a masterpiece. This was a big moment for movies. Um, it's big. It was. I've always respected it because, like as I said, it felt like a dude who was just really in love with what he's doing and putting it on screen. This wasn't Jurassic Park. This wasn't something that was a guaranteed hit that was going to be like, dude, this is dinosaurs with the latest technology. This shit's going to sell lunchboxes till the end of fucking time. This was a movie where a chick's getting stabbed in the heart with an adrenaline pen, starring John Travolta, hot off the Look Who's Talking franchise. I mean, come the fuck on, dude. This shit should not have worked. And it did. And like I said, I may have grown and moved on. I know a lot of other film fans have, but I don't know. I will always give it credit. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Back to Bruce Willis. It's just Bruce Willis being Bruce Willis. He's just weak compared to even
The same
Travolta.
could be
He's
the
just
same could be
weak.
argued about a lot of the cast members in this though. Ving Rhames is just being Ving Rhames.
Nah, he's got a gravitas though, man. He's got a
Uh, he's
gravitas.
had that gravitas in a lot of
He,
other stuff too.
he does. He does. I'm not shitting on Ving Rhames, dude. He's a
I
great
mean,
character actor.
he's directly played this. He's played the same character in a video game. But
After
they didn't say yeah after they didn't say his
what did
name,
he
but he literally played a parody of Marcellus in a shitty PC video game.
But before Pulp Fiction, what was he? Casualties of War, Jacob's Ladder. He was always like these side characters, and like he's a side character in Pulp Fiction, but he's a badass character. And another thing I will point out, and like, this kind of amazed me. It was some debate on some fucking film page. Someone they were talking about Pulp Fiction, and oh, that's what it was. They were attacking Tarantino for being misogynist, which I don't know. If there's one thing I would argue is that he's a feminist filmmaker I mean, his female, for a dude who is fixated on B films and genre films, his female characters are normally the ones who have the best outcomes and are written sharply just as the men are. I feel like all of his characters in his universes are always equal. You know what I mean? But what someone pointed out, I thought was really interesting. I never thought about how it was an interracial marriage with Mia Wallace and Marcellus, and I don't know why I brought that up, but I just thought like that's how well he writes characters. I feel like people may have noticed that in another movie, like especially in 1994, where it's like, oh, the boss is a black dude. The big boss over everyone in this fucking movie is played by a black man married to a white woman. And I think to the movie's strength and to Tarantino's strengths as a writer, that's just what it is. And the viewers, we don't even pick up on it. It's not a statement or anything. It just works.
Not
You
to jump
just
ahead too much, but I believe what you're referencing here about his well-rounded characters and how they're kind of equal is Tarantino doing Elmore Leonard.
probably clear influence on him. And you are more I I'll let you handle the Elmore Leonard talk. You know much more than I do on that, but I am aware of his style, and I'm aware that it was a clear influence on Tarantino. But
Yeah,
yeah,
he's openly admitted that his first two films, Dogs and Pulp Fiction, are I mean they're inspired by ripoffs, whatever you want to call them, Elmore Leonard style, like the gangsters doing crimes, and instead of sitting there and talking about we're
I
gonna
mean,
go in there and hold them up, they're talking about Royale with cheese and shit. Like that's
yeah,
Elmore Leonard style, like realism. Like when you're a fucking criminal, you're not gonna
yeah,
sit
yeah.
there and just obsess over the job.
It's
You're
a
gonna talk about
job.
Madonna's big
Yeah,
dick and shit.
exactly, exactly. I mean, and honestly, Reservoir Dogs, that's the whole setup of the movie. You're seeing a heist movie with no heist. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And I guess that sounds, from what I know of Elmore Leonard, kind of like an Elmore Leonard thing.
Exactly.
Um,
That is pretty much
yeah,
it's for me. That's the draw to it. Is that the all the characters feel they've got just a certain realism. They don't
yeah.
try like they don't go out of their way to be like specific characters.
Oh, no, no, no. They're definitely Tarantino characters. They're definitely recognizable archetypes of what he's known for. But there's such care, I don't know, put into them. Maybe not their names. I don't know what the fuck he thinks with their names sometimes. But but I will say, I think it's interesting what you just pointed out, though, and this is another criticism like film snobs tend to lobby at Tarantino, is the ripping off and homaging. To me, as you just said, he himself admitted this guy is not shy about talking his influences and talking he celebrates all those people. He celebrates Elmore Leonard. He said it himself, as you pointed out. And for
Mhm.
someone with his stature coming off of Pulp Fiction, giving Elmore Leonard a shout out, I mean, that's badass. I would feel differently if he tried to hide it. And he came out and Elmore who, like that would have been like, come on, dude.
Well, that would
But
have even been even weirder when his next movie was an Elmore Leonard adaptation.
Well, we're jumping ahead. I'll also say to tie in to actually, man, we're probably going on far too long. Let's just skip Four Rooms. His room is awesome. The rest of the movie you can pretty much skip.
Yeah, I would
Uh,
have to say his room is probably the best one. I didn't hate. I always mix
Rodriguez.
up. I always mix up Rodriguez. Rodriguez's was the one with the kids in the mattress, right? And
His
Antonio
view.
Banderas.
Yep.
Yeah, that
It's
one
not
was all
bad.
right.
I like Four Rooms, but I'm just saying for the sake of length, let's skip
The
that one. And I want to tie in.
skip the first chapter of Four Rooms. The first room, the Madonna room. If you don't need that one at all, fuck that.
uh, Dude, Allison Anders, what the fuck? I know gas food lodging and all that was like just happened, but wow, yeah, that room was fucking terrible. Um, but going back to his characters all being equal, I'm going to say From Dusk Till Dawn does this very well also. Of course, Clooney is like peak cool motherfucker. Uh, Tarantino is dorky psycho motherfucker, which
Creepy,
is
a creepy rapist.
creepy, yeah, cringy, rapey. It's like, yeah, put Tarantino in that one. He doesn't have to act. He's fine in this one. No, but I would argue the character, Harvey Keitel's character. I always loved him from Dusk Till Dawn, like those little badass moments he has, and I almost feel like in certain parts he's on par with Clooney as far as being cool. I
I
always
wouldn't go
loved.
that far, but I like that his character is trying to be. That's what it felt like to me. Like his character is
No,
trying to.
no one like. Well, go ahead. Trying to. I'm sorry. Let's go.
I was just gonna say, like his character was trying to, match Clooney's coolness because obviously Clooney's got a fucking gun to his face and holding him in the situation. So
In the
he's trying to
beginning,
like,
what scene I always loved, and I actually quote this sometimes, is the are you such a fucking loser that you can't tell when you've won? You know what I mean?
yeah.
I love that when Keitel kind of like drives it, and he's the only person in that movie who kind of checks Clooney.
Well, at
You
that
know,
by that point, it almost feels like he's
they're on the
almost
same
broken.
team. Or yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I will say
I said those
once
are two
once
different.
Keitel's alone and he's got the crucifix shotgun, at that point I will say he's maximum coolness.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna just talk about the coolness, but I'm pointing out more of like I feel like some filmmakers, especially in a horror type film, would have made the Keitel character cornier, or you know what I mean? Like it would have been more of a parody. I don't know. I like that. I like even Julia Lewis in that movie. By the end of it, I'm like, damn, I'm with her. Like I don't know. It's like they're always equal. I love dude. He that is his strong suit. And if he's ripping off Elmore Leonard, good. Keep doing it. Go back to doing it, please.
I will say that is definitely the drop off point for me. Once he got it out of his system by actually directly adapting an Elmore novel,
Yeah,
I lost all interest basically.
yeah. Oh, well, I know you're a huge From Dusk Till Dawn fan. What
Yeah,
are your
I
thoughts?
would give I would give Dusk a perfect 10 out of 10. Even I've said it before. Even the cheesy CG effects work for me. Everything about it works. Tom Savini has never been cooler as Sex Machine. Fred Williamson is Frost. He has a name. His name is Frost, the big giant black dude.
Well,
Uh,
I know who Fred Williamson is, but yeah, I didn't know what the fuck his name was in From Dusk Till Dawn.
I read the fucking credits. I was that loser.
Hey,
Uh,
Dude, it's a solid fucking movie. I cannot. It is a blast to watch.
It was my first time seeing Danny Trejo, and I would argue that Danny Trejo has never been cooler.
Welcome to the titty twister.
Him jumping up on the fucking pool table and ripping his shirt off to show the Mexican sombrero chick tattooed on his chest.
Yeah, and to your point, the shoddy CGI, because this film has such a comedic element to it, it works almost in its favor. Even stupid lines like, "Is it? It's Cheech, right? Who does that? You know what they say about me? I
I
suck."
suck. Yeah.
And it's like so fucking dumb, but it works because
And
it's
then
like
the
again, they're all having a blast. This is like, come on, it's fun, man. It's a fun.
Clooney's sorry, already had a wife. That line's always fucking great.
What did she say? You will be my dog.
You'll lick the dog shit from my boot heel
Like,
for I forget, but yeah.
dude,
Solid fucking movie.
I will butcher my favorite quote from it, so I have to ask you to do it. I believe you know what it is. It's towards the end of the film where Clooney.
Psychos don't explode when sun or yeah. Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give a shit how crazy they are. I believe that's it.
I think it's fuck because it always. I don't give a fuck how crazy.
It
There's
could
like a
be.
little pause. We both butchered fucking quotes, and it's funny because it's like, damn, when I see it, I love it, but it. Don't ask me what he said 5 minutes later.
Yeah, I'm focusing on what's happening in that. Also, I have to make special mention of the band because goddamn, that band was awesome. They get away. They're not even. Well, I mean, they explode. So
Yeah, yeah. But
take
they
it
were
however
like,
you
good
want to.
night,
But
fuck you. Then they give the middle finger, good night, or something, and they
yeah, fuck
explode.
you, everybody. Good night.
Yeah.
And I always liked how after they explode, you see their instruments awkwardly hanging there for a minute because they were rigged up to look like someone was holding them. You know.
And you know what? Well, another thing I'll say about From Dusk Till Dawn, which that was a terrible segue because it has nothing to do with what you just said, um, is we're talking about it as a Tarantino movie. I think it's kind of the opposite, where if we're going to say Tony Scott kind of did Tarantino, like how you said he out Tarantino. Dusk Till Dawn feels like a Robert Rodriguez movie
But
to
he
me.
did intentionally do the trunk shot, Tarantino's trunk shot.
Yeah, yeah.
I know he intentionally threw that in just because. And there's
Oh,
also
and
obviously
they're
there's all the shit with the feet, obviously, but I mean that was Quentin
yeah,
writing it in. No, I'm gonna suck
and
on fucking Salma Hayek's toes.
they're like fucking best friends at that time, especially. I'm not saying you're watching that movie and who wrote this. You know, of course it's Tarantino, but I mean the look of it and all. I'd argue it feels more of than like the Desperado El
Well,
Mariachi
that's
type.
just because it's in the fucking desert and in Mexico and shit.
Death Proof doesn't give me that feeling, and Death Proof is in Texas. You know what I
Yeah, but
mean?
Death Proof just sucks. Death Proof shouldn't remind you of Desperado. If Death Proof reminds you of Desperado, there's something wrong with you.
It does. It makes Desperado look so much better, is what I'm
And you know
saying.
what? You know what? I will go ahead since we're bringing up Desperado so much. Tarantino has a considerable cameo in that movie,
It is a
and
great.
I know you said you weren't big on his acting, which he himself has admitted his acting in Dusk, which, as we've joked, isn't really acting. It's just him being creepy and leering at bitches with his giant fucking forehead. If he leans forward enough, he's got the shadows under his eyes. It works.
And that's what baffles me about film fans who criticize him. It's almost like he'll tell you the shit that you're saying. I feel like a lot of people virtue signal when they talk about how it's like they're trying to tell you, no, I know the movies he's referencing, so he's shit. You know, it's not really a critique. It's more of a I want to tell you, I want to prove to you my cinema knowledge type of thing.
One
Yeah,
last note on From Dusk Till Dawn. A thing that's always cracked me up. Did you ever notice the Mexican streets or the Spanish streets that George Clooney's naming at the end sound like complete nonsense?
I, what do you mean? Like
He's like, you
when
go
he's
down
out?
to De Gallo. Once you get to De Gallo, like he's just saying a bunch of shit. It all sounds like complete nonsense, and that's because it is. It's just made up Spanish that Tarantino doesn't know Spanish. He just wrote Spanish sounding shit, and Robert
Doesn't.
Rodriguez just cracked up and left it in.
I was about to say, like, I'm sure there Rodriguez is on set, and I'm
No,
sure
Rodriguez was intentionally just like, we're using it. Try to say this shit, fucking Clooney.
that's great. I did not know that. That's that
Next time you
makes
watch it and you hear him stuttering through that shit, that's why.
sense.
It's not real at all.
I'm getting on YouTube and looking up. See, But all right, that brings us to I'd say what uh, I'd say the film the cinema snobs who I feel treat him unfairly. Even they admit this one was good. And this is 1997, I believe. It was Christmas of '97, so I think sometimes it gets labeled as '98. Uh, but Jackie Brown.
Hands down, my favorite Tarantino film, not including the aforementioned From Dusk Till Dawn, which, as we pointed out, was a Rodriguez film.
Effort, right? Um, See, it's weird. It's tied for me with Pulp Fiction. Personally, if you ask me right now and for the past I don't know 20 years or so, hey, would you want to pop on Pulp Fiction or Jackie Brown? I'm going with Jackie Brown.
Is that because you've seen it less, though?
No, I've probably seen it just as much. Actually, in the past 2 decades, in the '90s, definitely I saw Pulp Fiction more. Uh, in the past 2 decades, Jackie Brown has easily caught up to it. I've seen that film a lot. like I'm a big fan of. It's funny, like you see the Elmore Leonard stuff, and it's obviously a Elmore Leonard adaptation. I'm big on the black exploitation stuff. I'm big on the music. I'm
Yeah,
big
the
on
the
big
blaxploitation
hang out.
elements, for the most part, were mostly Tarantino, with the exception Ordell. Ordell was
Well,
always, a black gangster guy. So
I was about to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Rum Punch, the novel, she's not named Jackie Brown, and it's a white woman, isn't it?
yeah, I forget her last name, but it's Jackie something. And yeah, it was his idea
Uh,
to name her Brown to reference Foxy Brown and all that.
yeah, and I even love how he's Tarantino in his heyday in the films worth discussing that we are. He never used a score. All of his films would always use songs, that he never used a score. And Jackie Brown, it was the first time he utilized a score a little bit here and there. And it's the Roy Ayers stuff from Coffee, which was a Pam Grier film. And I've always loved that because I actually always, I own that Coffee soundtrack. so
Is that the one that has her singing the song in the courtroom and shit?
that's not on, what is that on?
I know that's Pam Grier when she was younger, but I don't know if it's from that film.
Long time woman. Fuck yeah, I have to look that up. I'm not even sure off the top of my head what that is. But all the well, not the meter sissy strut stuff, but the I don't know. Watch the movie. Like there's certain background music and the transition and whatnot, and it's all from the Coffee soundtrack. It's all the score that jazz legend Roy Ayers did for Coffee, and I liked that. I liked how he made it a tribute. I like how he took that in source material and added that flavor to it.
Yeah, it
And
definitely
I'll
didn't hurt, and I think it was a kind of a bold choice, especially for him to do at the time. You know what I mean?
for anyone to do at that time, it would be a bold choice today, and we live in quote unquote woke times. Think about this. He followed up arguably the most influential film, arguably the most mainstream influential film in the '90s, with a film where he cast a woman as the main character, a black woman,
In her
and
40s.
in her 40s. You wouldn't even see that today. When's the last time you seen a film come out where that the main character is a black woman in her 40s? Never. And it's part of the fucking plot. It's like part of the story. You know what I mean? It's not like they're shying away from her age in this movie. You know what I mean? Um, then come on, Robert Forster's got one of the best lines in it. My ass is getting bigger, and I love how it cuts to Forster. Nothing wrong with that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It always, dude. A friend of mine, we used to always say this to when I was growing up. Whenever someone got in a car with us, I would put something on, or I would put like, "Didn't I blow your mind this time?" on and I would just look over at the person. And I say, "I didn't know you liked the Delphonics." And nobody, I didn't. Most people don't follow movies the way I did back then. Nobody would ever get what I was talking about, and they would always, what are you, what's wrong with you, all this shit. But it was, I don't know, it would always make us laugh. Great film. Fuck it, I have nothing else to say.
I will say, aside from it, will probably because of the Elmore Leonard influence, I think this movie works better for me than Pulp and Dogs because it has more structure to it. Like you said, his movies tend to be hangout movies, and this one there's actually kind of a bit more going on, like a central plot going on. You know what I mean?
And
It's focused on one character as well, a title character.
yeah, no, I completely agree. This definitely is a more plot heavy film. Well, the most plot heavy film, probably. I mean,
But there's still plenty
I
of just Bob De Niro hanging out footage.
was about to say, you could also arguably say this has the most hangout scenes of any of his movies. You know what I mean? And that's a hard balance. Like I said, I give him a lot of credit, man. It kind of disheartens me to see people turn on him. I get it. He's not. I'm not saying he's the best to ever do it or that he is a god. You know, like, but that doesn't mean he's complete shit either. You know what I mean? Like, the man has given us classics.
All
He's
right.
done it.
So if you had to rate all what 5 6 movies we've touched on today, how would you rate them? Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, True Romance, Natural Born Killers, and From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay. See, Natural Born Killers is gonna fuck me up because I don't consider it part of it. In the context of shit, man. Let me do it without Natural Born Killers first. I'm just gonna go on personal opinion because I do think Pulp gets the edge just for being first before Jackie and literally just the impact it had. And I can't deny the impact it had on me. Um, I just have to give the, but I'm gonna go just personal preference. Jackie Brown number one, Pulp Fiction number two. Um, so then we're going.
True Romance, From Dusk Till Dawn,
Uh, I'll go.
Dogs.
I'll go Reservoir Dogs three, True Romance four, Dusk Till Dawn five, and I guess what was left, Natural Born Killers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I have to throw Natural Born Killers in there, it's probably going to be number three. But I don't even like doing that, and I don't even like putting From Dusk Till Dawn last on any list because that just shows how strong. From Dusk Till Dawn and True Romance are almost equal to me. That could be interchangeable.
My
Um,
list would very easily go Dawn, Jackie Brown, True Romance, then probably Natural Born Killers, and then the last two tying would be Dogs and Pulp.
well, that's weird. I bet a lot of people would do the exact opposite of what you just said. That's what makes you you, man.
And
Good talk.
yeah, I think that kind of brings us to the end of our
Right. All right, we went on way. I've been sitting in a. I'm not even mentioning that on there. Uh, we have to discuss it. What happened? Oh, well, maybe not what happened. Let me ask you this: is there any film of this century that he's done, and don't bring up like, hey, he produced Hostel or some shit like that. Well, I don't want to go into all that nonsense. Just literal writer directorial efforts. Is there anything this century you feel is worthy of at least a one-time watch, or do you feel it is all trash?
I mean, I sat through all of it except the most recent one, your favorite, the Hollywood. But I mean, any that I would tell anyone to seek out and sit
Oh,
through.
not even that. Just like complete trash. Do you think like they're all? Is there any? Is there anything he has done this century that is worthy? Like, I'm not saying like you have to sing its praises or it's the greatest thing, yada yada yada. It's a 10 out of 10. But I mean, a movie that like if someone was like, hey, what do you recommend if you had to recommend a Tarantino film from this century? What would it be if you had to? Put you on the spot with this one. I
I
mean, I
guess
feel like
I
you
guess
know.
I guess I would say Grindhouse, the theatrical cut, because then you would at least see the shorter version of Planet Terror.
Oh wait, a Planet Terror. I hmm, Rodriguez. So not even. the shorter Death Proof. You're saying the shorter Planet Terror.
Well, the Grindhouse release was both of them. So you would
Oh, I
you would
know.
see the Death Proof. You would have to suffer through that, but then you would get Planet Terror with it. And I would put Planet Terror above anything Tarantino has done since
Okay, I
Jackie
misunderstood you.
Brown.
Gotcha, gotcha.
So you would
Well,
you would get
you
some of the lowest actual Tarantino to get
and
some
there you
higher
have
quality Rodriguez.
there you have it, folks. This was another example of Deke's impenetrable knowledge or logic. You have you have knowledge as well, Deke. But yeah,
I would have
I
to go on
asked you
record.
one, and you go with the Robert Rodriguez movie. Good job.
I will go on record and say that I'm definitely a bigger Robert Rodriguez fan than I am Tarantino.
See, I'd argue his bad movies are worse than any of Tarantino's worst.
That's possible, but I mean, you can just ignore them.
You can do that with Tarantino. You can do that with everything. I mean, if we're
That's,
gonna
that's
compare
what
the
I
two, say
generally do. That's why this is half a career retrospective.
that. I have to throw this out there, and I know you're not going to back me up on this, but I have to say, I was kind of in that camp that you and most people were in with his output post Jackie Brown. I don't outright hate it all, and like I said, I've always rooted for this guy because I feel like he's the only dude who does what he wants to do and has the ability to do so, unchecked. He has full artistic freedom and he utilizes it. But the quality of his films fell off for sure. But I will say, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a return to form for me. I felt the closest to Jackie Brown out of any of his films he's made, which we both ranked very high. I put it at number one as my personal favorite, and like I said, the only reason Pulp gets the edge is because of its impact. Um, it was a return to form for me. I enjoyed it. It's definitely a hangout movie. It has a plot, you know, it's a very Tarantino movie. If you're gonna go in hating it, hate it. And I'm speaking to the people listening, not you, Deke. I know you are not touching this fucking movie. But I recommend it. After all the shit talking on his post Jackie Brown career, if anyone wants an example to see that, hey, maybe he still has it, I definitely recommend giving Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a shot. Anything else from this decade, like I said, I don't outright, or from the century, I don't outright hate, but I don't feel comfortable saying, hey, run out and check out Kill Bill if you haven't seen it. There's plenty of other movies you can get around to first. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think if you're a fan of Jackie Brown, you should probably check out Out of Sight, even if you've already seen it, because they're a nice little companion piece,
Oh,
a
Michael
little sh-
Keaton
yeah,
and the
a little shared universe before Marvel invented it, quote unquote.
well, I'll have to ask Marty if it's cinema or not, but either way, no, I'm not even opening that can of worms. Whatever. Let's let Marvel have that one. Okay, they invented it, Deke.
But
They
I mean,
invented.
there's no denying that Keaton's character was pretty awesome in both movies.
He does, yeah, yeah. And Jackie Brown, he's strong because I always liked he has a certain. He's almost like he's aloof in a way.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
Keaton. That's his charm.
yeah. It fit
Like
perfectly.
they
Like,
don't. Why it's cold? It's supposed to be cold. Oh, okay. Like that's fucking
yeah,
Keaton.
you're right. You're right. You're right. And well, let me ask you this: is the character in Leonard's work? Does Keaton do it justice? Or is it more of a Keaton thing, or is it more of a what's his name, Ray Nicolette, I
I
believe?
honestly don't remember that much. Mostly what I remember from the book, from Out of Sight in particular, is the Dennis Farina character, Lopez's dad, just ripping on him. So the fact that he's ripping on him in the book as well makes me believe that, yeah, probably he was. But I don't
Gotcha.
directly remember.
Yeah, I honestly have not seen Out of Sight since the '90s. I liked it. I have my recollection of it is that I enjoyed it. I didn't latch on to it. I think Jennifer
It's worth a
Lopez.
revisit. It's worth a revisit. I would honestly watch Jackie Brown and then watch Out of Sight. They work well as a companion piece,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
like as a double bill. It'd run a
Yeah.
bit long because, I mean, Jackie Brown's what, 215, 235? Out of sight, I think it's about an hour 47.
Hmm.
But I mean, you
Jackie
sit through
Brown
The
doesn't
Godfather,
feel,
so
but even that, Jackie Brown doesn't feel long to me when I watch it. Like there, even some movies that I like that are long, sometimes I feel like I'm watching some long film, even if I like it. Uh, Jackie Brown has always been so brief. It's such a fun experience to watch. It's like hanging out with, like I wanna catch up with Ordell. I wanna hang out with Bridget Fonda.
no, I
I
bet
don't
you
know.
do. Drink a protein shake.
Yes, I want her to cut me out of the photo of her and I living together in Japan. That was a deep reference. But yeah, there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed our Elmore Leonard podcast.
Don't ever watch The Big Bounce just because fuck Owen Wilson.
Wow. Yeah, dude. Leonard actually is out of. Again, I'm not well versed, but I feel like Out of Sight and Jackie Brown are probably the best regarded adaptations of his work.
Yeah,
Even the old, even the older ones, like 310 to Yuma, isn't that Leonard as well?
it is, and even he openly shit on the 310 to Yuma adaptation. He said something along the
Original.
lines of, I believe, yeah, I don't remember if it was the original or the remake, but he said that something along the lines of Hollywood took a 12-page story and turned it into a 2-hour nap, basically.
Love the man already.
But
Never read his work.
another solid, it's not quite nearly as great as Jackie Brown or Out of Sight, but another solid Elmore Leonard adaptation, which is actually a prequel to Jackie Brown. If you want to catch up with Ordell, it features a young Ordell,
Played
Life
by
of Crime, played by what?
Yasin Bey, Mos Def.
Yes, correct. But yeah, Life of Crime, solid movie. It also
Oh, tell me,
features a
does Mos Def? He's not doing like a Samuel L. Jackson impression, is he?
no, he's mostly just
Uh,
kind of a clueless gangster. Like
no, no,
it's
that's
young,
true.
it's young Ordell. He's dumb, which I mean he's
Gotcha.
not very smart in Jackie Brown. That's kind of the point. He's cocky
Oh,
and
yeah,
arrogant.
yeah, yeah.
But it's him and Lewis as they were young. Lewis is actually played by the guy that played Benny in the beginning of From Dusk Till Dawn, the liquor store owner.
Oh,
So
dude
so
from
it's that
Winter's
guy.
Bone.
It's that I don't know. It's that guy and Mos Def running around and they kidnap fucking who is it they fucking kidnap? I forget. But they kidnap a chick and hijinks ensue. I want to say it. I think it's Jennifer Aniston.
Dude, that film completely fell under my radar, which is weird, especially if it had a connection to Jackie Brown.
Yeah,
I
I actually
vaguely recall
I
hearing
didn't
about it.
even know it was out until I just randomly stumbled across, which I mean I don't pay that much attention anyway, but I randomly stumbled across the Blu-ray. Didn't even know it was attached to anything. Started reading the back of the case and was like Ordell Roby. Then I looked down at the credits like adapted from Elmore Leonard and I was like sold.
Yeah. What's some other ones? What was the one with like Anne Margaret 52 pickup?
Uh,
Is that it's not
I
pick
think
something.
it is. I think it is 52 pickup. I think they did Mr. Majestic.
Mm,
They made a shitty movie of Touch, which Touch is one of the worst novels he ever wrote, in my opinion. Not including his westerns, which with the westerns, it's mostly
more.
shorts.
Well, and that's I'd say I don't. You're not a big Western guy, so
Yeah,
I
well
wouldn't imagine.
that and plus they're short, so it doesn't really have time. Doesn't have
Yeah,
time to brew, and it doesn't. I mean, they're talking about like fucking cowboy shit.
exactly.
But there's Freaky Deaky. That's a decent one. It's got my boy Spawn in it, Michael Jai White.
Mm.
Uh, it's surprisingly
Oh,
sparse.
and then to tie it back, wasn't Michael Jai White in Kill Bill? Or am I not?
He could have been. I don't know.
I know,
If
dude,
he was,
that's what's so funny about Kill Bill. Like it is weird. I think when that came out, I was still kind of like giving him retroactive love from the movies he did. I kind of wanted to like it more than I liked it. I still don't hate it, but it is pretty forgettable for me.
you're not a
Uh,
fan of anime. I know you talked about before. What was your opinion when the movie just turned into a fucking cartoon?
I believe I was aware of it before I saw. I mean, I saw that in the theater, and I think I had read about it.
So you were prepared for it.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't even remember it. I couldn't tell you what it was.
I'm pretty
It
sure it's Lucy Liu's origin. It's Lucy Liu that's in it, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's her
The
origin.
only reason I remember a lot of stuff from Kill Bill, it's going back to my soundtrack. Well, I love the soundtracks, and I've listened to the Kill Bill soundtrack a lot, to where I've memorized or I'm overly familiar with certain aspects if it's referenced on the soundtrack, which that already cheated is. But yeah, like I said, good talk, my friend.
Yep. Enjoy your Royale with cheese, and whoever's listening to this shit, you just listen to an hour and 6 minutes of nonsense.
It's pretty solid. Mark will like it.
I'm just gonna cut it off after Royale with cheese.
Yeah, you probably should. That is funny. We always kind of like stumble at the end. Like, I'm not sure when you're gonna stop it, and I feel like you intentionally let me kind of ramble on, not knowing that there's a clear endpoint soon. So I start going, yes, I know Oranishi because of the Kill Bill soundtrack. Who cares?
I'm leaving all of this in.